Hi. Yeah, sure. Of course, I want to answer the survey. Yeah, sure. What I eat? Well, I love apples, vegetables, male, 1.95 meters, about 100 kilos. Yeah, I go to the gym all the time. Okay. All right. Thank you. Hi, I'm Olivier, and I just gave you a bit of information about myself. I'm human. And as a human, I do two things. I'm absolutely self-delusional, and I lie. Sometimes the two at the same time. So, in addition to all of this, there are two things my mom thinks I do super well in life. The first one is to speak about myself, done. The second one is to try to understand how your brains are functioning, why you make certain decisions, why you're being influenced by people, and how you can influence other people. And these kinds of information, they can be very useful. They can be useful for the companies, for the governments, for any kind of organization. Because we try to understand why people do things they do. And this has been my job for the past 15 years. Luckily for me and for most of you who try to understand human behavior, we've got the ultimate tool to understand you, and me. It's called the survey. If we want to know something about someone, we just ask questions. What do you do? What do you eat? What do you like to do? Where do you live? Etc., etc. The one thing that is fascinating about surveys is that if you ask all the people who sell surveys, they will tell you, yes, the knowledge they provide is very limited. The information they provide is very biased. Yet, if you look around in the public and the private sector, each year, hundreds of millions of dollars are spent in studies using methodologies that ask people what they think, what they do, what they prefer, and some very, very important strategies are just based on this information. This is really surprising, and a lot of people would say, this is because we have nothing else. We know it's limited, but we're using it anyway. That's interesting. In my view, surveys, interviews, focus groups are not to be dismissed. They are very, very informative. But they are informative not to understand what people think, not what people do, not what people are going to buy. They provide a very, very useful and precious information. They provide information about what people think they do, what people intend to do. And that already is something very valuable, whether you're from the public or the private sector. But say, if I really want to understand people, I need to do other things. I need to be able to measure what people actually do. And this is where a lot of methodologies that have appeared mostly over the past decade have become really, really useful in order to do one thing. This thing is to try to assess, measure, quantify the gap between what people say and what people do. The gap between my intentions and my actions. We're in an era that has been recently coined the fourth industrial revolution, an era where we can measure virtually everything. From our displacement with GPS to our online behavior. There is a wealth of data everywhere. The big question is not so much, do we have access to this data, but how can we use it for? What is very interesting is that thanks to the advent of technology, of analytics, nowadays we can predict the behavior of people online, the shopping behavior of people online. It's called micro-targeting. We can even influence it from time to time. And in order to understand the gap between intention and action, over the past 10 years, I've worked on a methodology that combines surveys, interviews, focus groups to know what people think they do, but combines it with recording their brain activity, recording what they are looking at, measuring their facial expression, the emotions, measuring how they move, postures, gestures, and then trying to look at what is happening. In a study that we conducted 2 years ago at the World Economic Forum on sustainable consumption, we were interested in understanding what language could help change the behavior of people, to entice them into buying more sustainable products, to entice them into consuming things that are healthier, that are better for their health and well-being. Things that would trigger in their brains this chemical transmitter called dopamine that basically provides this sensation of pleasure when you think about something, when you eat that thing. And it's interesting what we can do when we measure the behavior of people. So we ask people in a supermarket in the center of London to buy a list of products, to pick them up. Sometimes we are telling sustainable products, sometimes we are just telling products. And then afterwards, we were interviewing people and saying, okay, why did you buy this meat? Why did you buy this water? Why did you buy these fruits? And you know what? When you ask people questions, they give you an answer. And sometimes they give you an answer to a question they never asked themselves. And this is what happened. So people were telling us, yeah, we looked at the label, we looked at the calories, etc. But the twist was people were wearing glasses that measured where they were looking at. And what we observed is that for most of the good reasons, the good answers they were giving us were absolutely not correlated to their actual behavior. When they were telling us we were looking at labels, they were looking at colors or at things that were surrounding. And this is how we manage to assess the gap between what they say and what they do, between intention and action. So what we're trying to do when we work on changing food behavior is to understand what people think, to compare it to what people do, and then use this information, this very precise information and precious, in order to change their behavior. But in order to change people's behavior, we know two things. We know that informing them is not enough. It's not because we are given the accurate information that we're going to change our behavior. The second thing we know is that we need to find the right incentives. And these incentives might not be the money, might not be a lesson, a lecture on something else. But we need to play on what is, triggering pleasure in people's mind. So next time you answer a survey, next time you're being observed, or you try to understand how people do things, keep this in mind. We have this huge gap between intention and action, but I have good news for you. It's not bad. It's just being human. Thank you.